Halloween, a night when the realms of the living and the dead intertwine, and ancient traditions come alive in city neighborhoods. On this night, people hang pumpkins with carved, frightening faces outside their homes to ward off evil spirits, and children transform into little monsters, witches, ghosts, hunting for sweets. Darkness falls swiftly, and the sounds of the night are replaced by footsteps, laughter, and the rustling of costumes. Bold and not entirely innocent in their frenzy, for sometimes the darkness itself decides to join the festivities. This night foretold trouble. However, Liz and Molly, two young friends, weren't thinking about any of that. Like everyone else, they dressed up in costumes and went from house to house to fill their baskets with treats. They were unstoppable. Liz had chosen a witch's costume with a long black cloak, a frightening hat, and a fake broom. Her friend, Molly, dressed as a vampire, her face painted white, with fake fangs protruding from her mouth and a cloak as deep as the night. Nearly every door they knocked on opened, and cheerful adults greeted them, offering candy, gummies, and chocolate. But then they noticed a house on the corner that stood out. It seemed old and neglected, with dark windows and drawn curtains. The girls exchanged glances, and without a word, approached the door. Liz reached out and knocked gently. To their surprise, the door opened immediately, without the slightest creak. An elderly couple greeted them on the threshold, with wrinkled faces but warm smiles. The house was dark and quiet, but the grandma and grandpa seemed friendly. "Aren't you adorable?" the old woman cooed, leaning toward them. "Why don't you come inside? We have special treats for such lovely girls." Despite a faint sense of unease, the girls stepped inside. The house smelled of something sweet but slightly cloying. In the corner, a tray of candy sat on a small table, and next to it was an antique teapot, emitting a faint steam. The grandmother poured tea into old cups and, smiling, offered it to the girls. Molly, though feeling uneasy, decided it was all part of the holiday and nodded to her friend to follow suit. Liz took a cautious sip, noting a strange, bitter taste, but said nothing. They had only just exchanged glances before a powerful drowsiness overtook them. The world around them blurred, and darkness swallowed their consciousness. Liz awoke to a sharp chill piercing her bones and tried to move her hands, but her fingers were bound tightly by ropes biting into her skin. She looked around, though the light was dim and faded into the corners, leaving the room half hidden in shadow. For a moment, she thought this was just a nightmare. However, the smell wafting from the far corner of the basement shattered her hope. Thick, suffocating, it was a mix of rusted iron, mold, and decay. Liz felt her stomach twist in nausea. Through the murk, she saw jars beside her on the floor, old, dusty, but filled with something thick and dark. One jar was open and she caught a sharp scent of iron, like blood. The label on the lid read, "Sweet Treat." She immediately understood this was no ordinary basement. It was a place where lives ended to serve a horrific purpose. Her gaze fell on the far end of the cellar, where, like something from a nightmare, a rusty metal furnace loomed, shrouded in smoke and soot. Nearby, an old table was covered in dirty rags, on which lay sharp knives and strange metallic instruments. Dried dark blood stained one of them, and Liz felt cold sweat begin to trickle down her temples. Then she saw her friend Molly, lying motionless on the floor, her hands limp like a broken doll's. Her face, usually lively and smiling, was now pale, as though all life had left it, and her eyes were closed, as if she were merely asleep. But Liz immediately understood. Her friend was gone. The warmth that once filled her heart was replaced by icy terror that seemed to grip her throat, making it hard to breathe. At that moment, she heard muffled voices. The old couple, exchanging quiet words filled with calm satisfaction. The old woman, slightly swaying, approached the table, and with almost ritualistic concentration, began adding ingredients to a boiling pot. Each step was precise and deliberate, as if she were preparing a special dish. Her wrinkled hands bore dark stains that seemed to have absorbed so much blood they could never wash clean. The old man joined her, opening a sack filled with sticky, dark fabrics, and started placing them in the furnace. Flames flared and the stench instantly intensified, filling the entire cellar. Shivering, Liz felt her breathing become shallow and frantic. As Liz was beginning to lose hope, she heard a knock on the door above. Her heart raced. It was other children coming for candy. The elderly couple turned to the sound, a greedy smile distorting their faces. While the old couple went upstairs, Liz frantically tugged at the ropes, finally managing to loosen them a bit. She freed one hand, then the other, trying not to make a sound. In pain and fear, she untied her legs and quietly, almost silently, approached a window in the corner of the basement. She shattered the glass and without looking back crawled outside. Panting and with scraped hands, Liz ran to the nearest police station. There, through tears and terror, she told them everything she had seen. The officers, though skeptical, listened to her. They called a car and drove with the girl to the address she had given. When they arrived, Liz felt a chill seep into her heart. The house stood dark and silent. Its windows were broken, and from inside came a faint smell of dust and decay. The police turned on their flashlights and searched the entire house. But aside from old, almost rotted walls and broken pieces of furniture, they found nothing. One of the officers approached Liz and, sighing, told her that no one had lived in the house for a long time. Liz was stunned. She remembered the smell, the faces of the old couple, the terrifying whispers, the jars of blood. Everything had seemed real, but reality no longer existed. The police didn't believe her, dismissing it as an overactive imagination and the influence of Halloween. But Liz knew this wasn't just a dream or a figment of her mind. She would forever remember the smell and the icy terror that didn't leave her even years later. Every night before sleep, she heard a faint, barely perceptible whisper coming from somewhere far away, from the darkest part of her mind. A whisper reminding her that Halloween is not just a fun holiday, and that ancient horrors still roam the world, hiding behind masks of goodwill. And although Liz survived that night, memories of that house, the old couple, and the dark basement would always remain a part of her, lurking in the deepest corners of her mind as a chilling reminder of the night she encountered true evil.